Good day to one and all. As we meditate today, let us look at the topic, Purging the Den of Robbers. Mark 11:15 to 18 tells the story. What does it say? On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those who were selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And he taught them. He said, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers." The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him, for they feared him, because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. From this passage of scripture, there are several lessons we can learn. However, today, in the interest of time, I will quickly look at one important lesson, which is gleaned from the verse 15 of this Mark 11. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. Robbers will not be tolerated in the house of the Lord. Illicit trading activities take place in the house of the Lord. Robbers exist in our midst, but Jesus has no tolerance for variant behaviors in the house of the Lord and will act to combat such behavior and activities. Robbers will not be tolerated. Actions will be taken against them. While some people were prepared for spiritual and evangelical experience, others were prepared for business, commercial enterprise, and exorbitant profits, robbing the people. In the best of places, in the most sacred atmosphere, bad influence exists. Let us not fool ourselves. It is a fact. Not only did Jesus drive them out of the temple that day, he overturned their tables. Sometimes, as people of God, we see the wrongdoing. We know it ought not to be done, but we do nothing about it. Not all Ephesians 5 and 30. Ephesians 5:30. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. You know, the story is told in Acts 5 of Ananias and Sapphira. In that story, we can clearly remember that Ananias and Sapphira conspired to rob the system unnecessarily too. You know, in the early church, persons of the Jewish persuasion, or the Jews actually, were being converted into Christianity. Their family members and friends would despise them and neglect them. The family would not support them anymore and would disinherit them. So some of them suffered and had needs. So Peter and the elders decided that, oh yes, we'll work the system out, ask people to contribute who had resources, so we can help those who were more or less fortunate and were having the problems. Ananias and Sapphira, that couple, made a commitment also. They decided to sell a piece of land and committed to take all the money that the land was sold for and take it to the church. However, when the land was sold, they thought it was too good to give everything. So they together conspired to just pass over a portion. Ananias came first passed the amount to Peter. Peter discerned and said, "Oh, is this all?" And Ananias said, "Yes." And so was it. He was struck dead right there and then and was taken out. Shortly after, the fire came, and Peter questioned her as to say, "Was that all the money? Was this the land sold for?" And she said, "Yes." Peter said, "How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also." And she fell dead. My dear friends, now that we know that illicit trading activities take place in the house of the Lord, robbers exist in our midst, and that God has no tolerance for variant behavior in the house and will act to combat such behavior, let us move away from the slightest inkling of such actions or activities and commit to play our part in purging the den of robbers. Let's play our part.